Hello there, it's Egwin from Scope of Life again. This time with a very short tutorial. It's just about opening the hips, opening your iliosacral joints, which are back here, where the sacrum and the hip bones intersect with each other. And just show you like one or two small exercises. There's a lot to say about how to open the hips, especially the rear here. So I'm gonna run through different tutorials here. This time, just a small one for something that's very important. Opening the hips, especially the rear of the hips, is quite a good exercise that will help you in your daily life, that will help you to prevent pain that's running down into your leg in the ischius neural system. And so that's something that will really benefit you. Also, in your overall life force, and you just feel a lot more agile and a lot more like, yeah, I want to do that. As soon as your pelvis is a little bit more open and can maneuver better. So actually one of the main things is it's important to move this whole area. So how can we do that? Well, we do it a little bit by walking around all day. I'm going to show you a small exercise that will actually help you directly with the joints that we want to move, with the hips and, as I mentioned, the iliosacral joints back here. So just stand with your feet parallel to each other, the inside of the feet parallel to each other, like so. Yeah. Make them roughly hip wide. It's not that important, just not that far apart and not completely close. So it's important that the feet, that you have enough room between your legs so that your hip can be placed in between with no problem, and you don't feel like tight, and you also don't feel completely open. Just a natural stance with the inside of the feet parallel to each other. Now sink a little bit into your knees, but make sure that your spine stays straight, especially in the lower back. So make sure that nothing like this happens, where your bum gets stuck out and you have this curve in your spine. And also make sure that nothing like that happens, where you sink into your knees and your whole body is suddenly bent backwards. That's exactly what we want to try to avoid. So from an upright position, just make sure to gently sink down a little bit. Make sure especially that the lower back area is released downwards. Now if you take a closer look to this area, I'm going to move my device a little bit to the side here. Yeah, you should be able to see it now. Now, if you take a look at this area, even in normal stance, some people tend to stand like this, like with a small curve back here, pushing the belly to the front. That's already an unnatural position. So what we want is, we want to sink the sacrum down. Just relax in the hip joints and try to relax in the lower back area here. Relaxing in the lower back area can be difficult. It really takes some time until the muscles down here release. There's a reason for that as well, because those are also the muscles that tend to tense up at first as soon as you have any kind of stress. So there are two major areas in the body, muscular-wise, that react to stress first. Apart from your nervous system in the belly, it's the muscles up here in the neck area, followed by the shoulder muscles, and it's the muscles in the lower back area. So right now, just from this position, we want to gently, even before bending the legs maybe, if possible, just let the sacrum sink down like that. Notice I haven't used my belly muscles, so I didn't do anything like that. Huh? I didn't activate my belly muscles in order to pull my pelvis up in front. No, I just release the muscles so that the sacrum can sink down naturally. That will take some practice, obviously, but you'll get better in time. Much easier than doing it upright, it is already when you sink into the legs a little bit. So bending the knees will automatically allow you to lengthen your spine in the rear much better and to let your sacrum naturally sink down a little bit. Now this position alone is already very comforting for the whole area of the iliosacral joints, which are here and here, for the whole lower back area, because it will open up the vertebrae to one another a little bit, just taking tension out, not really like pulling them apart. And it will open up the hip joints in the rear, where there is also sometimes a lot of tension. So it's just the simple thing of bending your knees and make sure that your lower spinal column is sunk downwards, that your sacrum, your os coccyx, is actually sunk downwards, like so. Make sure, as I mentioned before, not to be bent to the front or to the rear. Make sure that there is an angle in the hip joints and not something like that where there is just none and you didn't really bend in the hip joints, you only bend in the knees. Now we want to bend in the hip, in the knee and in the ankle, just like that, and then make sure that the lower back area is gently sunk downwards. From this position, that alone can be one exercise that you can do in your day, that you just can do whenever you maybe like stand in front of a desk, stand maybe even while cooking on a kitchen table or something like that, while you're waiting in the copy machine, something like that. And there is an extension to this exercise. So I would call this exercise 2 already. You make the same preparations, so sink into your knees, hips, make sure that your sacrum is sunk down, make sure that your belly didn't do the work, like that. Just sink down, your belly is still relaxed, your lower back muscles are as relaxed as possible. And from this position on, make sure to twist a little bit to the front and to the rear. I'll show you that from the front in a second. Just watch my knees. My knees are doing a forward-backward motion here. So my right knee is actually going to the front. Now my left knee is going to the front. When you look at it from the front, it looks like that. I bend in my knees, I'm in the position, and now I shift my legs just a little bit. You might notice that my center of gravity also shifts a tiny little bit, always to this side where the hip joint is completely closed in front, my right side in this time. So if the left knee goes to the front, my right hip joint is closed. When I come back to the left, my right knee is in front and my left hip joint is closed. My center of gravity is a little bit more over to the left side. Not completely, just a little bit more. Now by doing so, normally in your daily life, it's a rare thing that your hip joints get open and closed that much. So that again is already a very good exercise, because all the areas in a joint that aren't used regularly, they tend to take on roughage, tend to take on like toxins that are stored in those areas. By gently moving joints into areas that are normally not in use, you also sort of scrape out all the garbage that got stored in there. Make sure to drink a lot of water after that, just to clean your body, to cleanse it, to really like get all the stuff out that isn't supposed to be stored inside your joints. Now, back to the movement. what I'm really doing here, you don't really have to try and like have your pelvis parallel to the ground or something like that, because in this position, naturally, one part of my hip, my right side this time, because my right knee is in front, will naturally be a little bit closer to the ground. And then that. Make sure that in the end, you actually have this little extra movement where you really try to close the hip on the closing side, so on the left side for me now. Because this tiny little extra movement is exactly what makes the exercise. This tiny little extra movement is exactly the amount of movement you need in order not only to open the hip joint in the rear, but also in order to get a slight pull on your iliosacral joints. Not only in a horizontal, but also in a slightly vertical angle. So actually, you're trying to sort of shear off a little bit in the iliosacral joint. So that's a very nice movement that will actually open up the hips and the whole pelvic region just a tiny little bit. Nothing extraordinary, nothing that can't be done. Actually, that's a very good beginner's exercise. There is only one thing that you have to remember. And that one thing is make sure that your knee joints, they are always pointing in the same direction as your toes. So my feet are parallel to each other. I've been dropped down in the knees. Now, when I push my knee to the front, look at that. My left knee is still pointing in the same direction than the left toes. And my right knee is still pointing in the same direction than my right toes. What you shouldn't do is something like that, where one leg suddenly starts pointing into another direction than my toes. Now this, in a bent knee, is not really good, because that means you have a twisting motion in your knee joint, and that's exactly what we try to avoid here. So from this position, just gently sink down, make sure that your sacrum is dropped down gently. Now start with this, just gently moving to the front and to the rear of your legs. Look at the knees. Yeah? Realize they are always in the same direction than your toes. And then, after you've done a couple of repetitions, like maybe 4 or 6 or something like that, then you can start and actually go into position and give this tiny little extra opening movement. Your focus is not in front, your focus is actually in the rear. So I show you that from the behind. From this position, I just sink down. That's the normal position. Now watch this area here. I try to press this whole buttock area on the right side back out a little bit more, and this opens up the iliosacral joints back here very nicely, very gentle, no big movements. All right, one more thing, because sometimes I've been looking down, showing you. Make sure that when you do this exercise, you don't look down all the way and all the time. Meaning, make sure not to do the exercise like that, because now you have much too much weight in front. And also make sure that you don't look down all the time. All the time meaning, when I'm in this position, I do the exercise, I might, okay, cool. My knees are in the right direction. And then again, I just gently lift my head up, start watching out, like more or less parallel to the ground again. So my head is actually resting comfortably and very high, not sunk down like this, because this again will give you a slight strain back here. which isn't too good for our exercise because in terms of fascia, the whole body is connected. And when you have tension back here, you also have tension in the lower back fascia system, which isn't that good at all if we want to open this area up. All right, so that was exercise number 2. Number 1 was just this simply sinking down. Number 2 was this coming to the front and to the rear with this extra motion. Also make sure not to fall like into this curvature of your lower spine again. Make sure that when you do this exercise, you don't do anything like that. Yeah? Make sure, once again, that your body structure is more or less exactly over the area where you're working, so over your legs, not bent to the front like this. All right, one more exercise. That's actually the best exercise for your daily life in order to open up the piriformis muscle. Piriformis muscle runs from back here to the side of your upper leg area. So to the trochanter major, which is the bone you feel right outside here. When you move your leg, you'll feel this bone move on the side. So if that's my sacrum back here, this muscle actually comes from the inside of the sacrum, runs behind my pelvis, underneath the glutes, and attaches to this trochanter major, which is this bone moving out here. So this muscle, basically running out here, is one of the most important muscles when it comes to freedom in your hip joint and to pain relief that you might have gained, like pain that might come from too much sitting, especially sitting in a car or something like that. So every pain that comes from back here and sort of runs down the leg, you might check the piriformis muscle, do a little bit of stretching, massaging, opening this area up. That might already be the trick and relieve all the pain. Now, running to this exercise. This exercise is very easy. You can do it in different levels. I show you a rather advanced level to start with. Rather advanced level would be this height. What I mean? Well, it's easy. From this position here, I just bring up my leg to this. This is nice. For me, this is comfortable. For you at the beginning, maybe not. Important thing here, just to show you, your foot has to rest and your knee has to rest as well. This is the very important thing here. Both parts have to rest. And from this on, now you can gently put your upper body to the front and stay in this position. Now this will open up this area back here. You will feel a little bit of tension, a little bit of strain back here. Try to relax the whole rest of the leg and just gently come to the front. Just be there a couple of seconds, maybe a minute, something like that, before you gently go back down again and do the whole thing on the other side. Actually, you can do that everywhere, wherever you want, at the window, on a table, on a chair even. You just stand there, make sure that your pelvis, your whole body is turned to the area where your leg is placed, table or whatever. Yeah? And now you just gently bend forward again, this time opening up the left side of your hip area here. Now, obviously, this is very high for beginners because, as I mentioned, it's very important that your knee joint and your ankle are both resting comfortably. Now, I had placed some of those bricks here. You can also do it at this height, no problem whatsoever. You just place your foot down here. Huh? Make sure, once again, that your ankle and your knee joint are resting comfortably, and from this angle, now you just gently bend forward. When you're a beginner, this will be enough to feel a little bit of tension back here, which is exactly what you want to gain, which is exactly what will help you to open this area up. Now, if for any or whatever reason you can bring up your ankle, but you can't bring down your knee, just put something underneath. Meaning? Another brick here. So when you put your foot here and you find yourself not being able to get your knee down to the position where it's supposed to be, then never ever try to force anything. Never ever try to bend to the front in this position where your knee is completely up in the air. Because when you bend to the front right now, there is a lot of inside rotation in your upper leg area. And that's actually one of the very few things that could happen in any of those health exercises where you could actually damage your knee, where you could actually damage the cartilage in your knee because of too much rotational pressure. In order to avoid that, because you can't be that precise with holding your knee stable in this position as long as it's not supported. So if you need support, well, then put something down here where you say, okay, so now my knee is supported. Yeah? It's a little bit too narrow here to show properly, but I think you get the idea. The most important thing is you have to make sure that your knee joint is supported. And then again, you can bend to the front. And then again, there is no health hazard to the knee or whatsoever. And this will really open up those back areas in your hip, in your pelvic region. It's a very nice, very easy to do exercise, an exercise that you can do as soon as you don't wear completely tight jeans or something like that, or maybe a skirt when you're a woman. So just whenever you have the opportunity to bring your leg up just from the movability that your clothes give you, you can do this exercise. And it doesn't take a lot, it doesn't take 10 minutes, it just takes maybe 30 seconds on each side to gently open up this rear hip area here, which is really good, which will really propel you forward in terms of feeling safe, feeling stable in your own self, and feeling centered and grounded, as well as you have a major pain relief exercise here on your hands. So once again, we have 3 exercises today. One exercise was feet parallel to each other, just gently drop down in your knees. Make sure that your lower spinal column and your sacrum sunk down naturally. They're completely relaxed. Just this position, and make sure to actually relax your whole buttock area. So when you're in this position, try just gently relax back here so that your buttocks are actually completely loose. This again will open up the structure a little more, and yes, it's possible. You don't need your buttocks to be standing in this position. Second exercise was the same position, feet parallel to each other, sinking into your hips, into your bending your knees a little bit, and then this shifting one leg to the front after the other. You might notice both legs are always bent, so it's never ever something like this, that one leg gets actually stretched to the rear. That's part of another exercise right now, just very gently opening the hip joint in the rear. Make sure your hip is closed in front and you have this tiny little extra opening back here without bending your vertebrae in the lower back area too much to the front. Last exercise bringing your leg up, maybe on a table, maybe even on a chair. You can use a chair with the seating area and with your back, this back support. It's easy just to put yourself on a chair. Then you have this slight angle again. Then you can gently bend forward, and by doing so, opening up back here. As you progress, you might not need the supportive system anymore. You might be able to just let the foot drop down completely so that the ankle and the knees are both supported. Then you can do this bending to the front. And when you progress even further, then it's no problem to do it even up here. Actually, that's a very comfortable position. I really like to stand in also sometimes. Maybe if you, I don't know, you're in the opera and having a standing place and you still want to have it a little bit more comfortable. It's a nice position to get into. Just to, you can sort of lean and cuddle with yourself, lean on yourself, cuddle with yourself. So that's really a nice thing. And also, as I mentioned, very, very healthy, very good for your pelvic region. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any further questions, leave them in the comment box. I'm going to run over more exercises, more details within the next couple of weeks, months. So just stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe and stay updated on everything that happens here and that is designed to boost your overall health and your flexibility, movability, and your joy in life. Have a wonderful day. See you again soon. Bye.